So, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today. I know that everybody's time is very important. I appreciate everybody for coming. If you forgot my name, it's Kendrick Payne. I'm a social worker here at the agency. Last time we met, we had the opportunity to get acquainted with one another. I appreciate everybody for sharing. Then we set some ground rules, which is to respect each other's views and opinions and actively participate if possible. And we talked about confidentiality, socializing outside of the group, which, to jog your memory from last week, everyone here is free to talk about as much as they want to whomever they want, but you're not permitted to mention other persons in the group's name or describe them. And is everybody okay with that? Okay. So we want to make sure that this is a safe place. This everybody should know that, and we want to preserve the atmosphere. So, as best we can, everything that we talk about here is meant to protect and be treated with respect. So I want everybody to feel free, to talk about things that are personal without it being shared outside of the group. Is basically what I mean. So I appreciate you all for being so brave and coming to share a part of your journey with us. It's expected that we work together as a group to help one another. We also discussed the informed consent, which establishes rules and regulations related to the agency and general information about cognitive behavioral therapy with respect to depression. So, we're all here because we've experienced some form of depression, and that level of depression looks different for all of us. But I have no doubt that we all possess the tools to help one another. So, with that being said, before we go any further, I want to do a check in with each one of you, if that's okay. We will go around the group, and each of you will just say the name that you like to be called so that everybody knows. And we'll briefly discuss your current depression level over the past week. And then I'll kind of ask you how that depression level has changed since last week. So, does anybody feel comfortable with sharing kind of that this week right now?
Sure, I can go first.
Awesome.
Um, I think this week I'm more at a five. It's been a really good week for me. Really, I've been really hard at work, but I've been trying to do a little more work-life balance to find more time.
Mhm.
But yeah, so far it's been doing good. Last week it was a little higher, but we were slammed at work, and I felt like I didn't have any free time, didn't have any personal time, and I don't talk to anybody. So there was a lot more depression last week, but this week everyone's a little more ready to just kind of relax and just visit with one another. So it's been good.
Awesome. So I'm hearing you say that your depression level has improved over the last week, and
Mhm.
that's really awesome. I mean, I hear you talk about time and having more time on your hands. Are there certain things that you enjoy doing that's made that better and has improved your depression?
Yeah, I've been trying to have a morning routine where I wake up a little bit earlier to give myself more time so that
Awesome.
I'm not rushed out the door, and it's helped.
So you rate today. How are you feeling? A five, and how does that compare to
Hmm.
last week? What would you say you were at last week?
Last week I was at a seven, so it was a lot higher.
Okay.
Which yeah, so I'm glad
Okay.
that it's down.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate that.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody else want to share?
I can.
Awesome. Ken?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I go can.
Awesome.
Um, say I'm also probably about a five. I know I was pretty up there at a eight last week, but things have been going pretty well for me too. My wife and I did a few things over the week, and I think it I think it was good for us.
That's awesome. So you're spending more time with your wife. You guys are doing things that you feel is improving your depression level.
Yeah, I mean this week it's been pretty good.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. I think it's always good spending time with your significant other, and it really can have an impact on you since that's the person that you plan to be with for an extended amount of time. It's just not like somebody who's just in and out of your life. It's somebody that you truly know. So, thank you for sharing, Ken. Anybody else?
Yeah. Excuse me. So I I had an okay week. It was maybe slightly better than last week. Um, I would say I'm probably at like a 7 right now, but I was more like 8 or 9 last week. Just had some just I just really don't like going to work every day. It's just the
Sure.
same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my coworkers all have fun stuff to do after work, and I just come home and do the same stuff. And I used to have my cat that I used to come home, but I don't even have my cat anymore, so I just go home by myself. So it's just
Yeah.
been lonely. So I would say, yeah, like a 7. It's been a little bit better because I felt better about I knew what to expect coming into this group therapy, so I felt like maybe I'd get some help. So that was
Yeah.
nice, but still about a 7.
Well, thanks for that, Kay. I think that, any small improvement is still really good. The fact that you did drop your depression, one in a week, and it's specific to you. So that jump for you may have been a lot bigger than a lot of people think. I think repetition as well can be really exhausting, doing the same thing over and going to work and doing the same thing and kind of comparing yourself to others. It kind of makes you feel like you're missing out, right? I can kind of attest and agree to that too. So thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. And what about you, Judy? How was your week?
Um, yeah, I last week I would say I was really having a hard time and struggling, and I would say I was closer to an 8. But this week has been a little bit better. I guess today I'd say I'm more around a 5 or a 6. Um, you know, I feel like after the things that we talked about last week and what we worked on over the week that we're going to be sharing today kind of helped me think through some things and not let things bother me as much as I did before. I had a situation happen this week that was kind of frustrating, and I was able to think it through um, and work through my feelings a little bit better. So
It seems like
I'd
you're
say an
actively
improvement.
thinking about things, which is awesome. You're
Yeah,
really conscious of your thoughts at this point, and I think that attests to what we talked about last week. So it sounds like right now you said that you're about a 5 or a 6, and last week you were about an 8. So
yeah,
that improvement is actually huge. That's awesome.
it is.
So, I mean, I
Thanks.
applaud
Yeah,
you all for that, for actually diving into the conversation that we had last week about cognitive behavioral therapy and learning about your thoughts. Today, we're going to go into that a little deeper. Um, so, the purpose of us being here today is to become more cognizant of our thoughts and behaviors so that we can improve our depression levels. We will all want to do that. Um, what we'll do is we will first, we'll discuss cognitive behavioral approach today, which is based on the notion that our thoughts about a situation and not the situation itself is the source of our behavioral issues. So essentially, we want to eliminate or even reduce our own negative thinking patterns and behaviors that contribute to our depression. It's okay for everyone to use this approach today. Head nods are okay. If it is it okay to use CBT with you guys today? Awesome.
Yes.
So on the agenda, so that we're all more oriented to the process, is for us to obtain more education about what we call CBT triangles. Um, what we'll do is we'll go over that. We'll discuss more in depth in a second what that means. Um, and we will learn about thought records. I hope that you guys did those for homework last time. And we'll also get homework to do between now and next week about what we covered today. Does that sound okay with you all? Does anybody have any questions or feedback before we move forward?
Will we get to share will we all have to share the thought records, or just a couple of us?
Yeah, so when we get to that point, we're going to only go over 2 thought records today because they can be a little bit lengthy. So we'll just designate 2 people, whoever wants to volunteer first, and then we'll go over 2 people's thought records today. Everybody will have an opportunity to speak, but only 2 people will be allowed to go through them. And then next time we'll go over 2 others' thought records.
Okay, because I kind of wanted to go over mine, so I just wanted to make
Sure.
sure that we would
Well,
have time.
Kate has first dibs on thought records, and she's already called first. So that's what we're gonna do. If that's okay with
Okay.
everybody. I'm getting nods. That's okay with everybody.
Cool.
Yeah.
So to put this into more context, so I haven't talked about CBT triangles yet. So I want to give you guys some information about that. So I want to take a moment to provide you all with some information about CBT triangles. I already said that depression is viewed as a thinking disorder and a mood disorder as well. And that kind of significantly affects our feelings and behaviors. So if you think about your feelings and your thoughts, you can see kind of how this directly affects your behaviors. So I want to show you all a diagram of a triangle. What you see is your thoughts at the top. You'll see your feelings at the bottom right corner and your behaviors at the bottom left. So CBT triangle is essentially describing the connection between our thoughts, our moods, and our behaviors. And in a more specific way, what we see is our thoughts at the top of the triangle. We see our feelings at the bottom right, and we see our behaviors at the bottom left. This then becomes a cycle, if that makes sense, where our behaviors lead back to our thoughts. It's important to note that our thoughts do not cause depression, but more so instead our thoughts are connected to our depression. Okay. And we can change our behaviors by actively thinking and being more cognizant of our thoughts. So to put this in context, I want to give you guys a hypothetical example. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So I'll just use myself for example, and feel free to chime in about what you think and how this situation will make you feel. And then we'll practice a little bit. So, for example, if I were deciding to go on a date with a friend, and that friend decided not to let me know and just completely, blew me off and didn't tell me anything, just didn't show up. So that would be the situation. Okay. And from that situation, that will cause me to think certain thoughts. And maybe some of my thoughts will be, well, maybe that person doesn't just want to be my friend anymore. Maybe that person doesn't like me. And those thoughts will influence how I feel. So how I would feel would probably be angry or sad. It would be some type of negative emotion. So we can all think about how, those feelings will affect our behaviors then on. So if I were to have a regular routine where I would, go for a evening run, or I would do something, with my family, usually, because I'm sad or angry about this situation, it'll affect my behavior. So instead of me going on that run, I'll be depressed and I'll just say, I'll just go to sleep. So now you can see my behavior is affected by my thoughts initially from this situation. So if we could think about a healthy scenario would be to think about this situation and this person decided not to show up, instead of me automatically thinking, oh, this person is blowing me off, maybe a more healthy scenario would be me thinking that this person may have something going on or may have just simply forgot. There are other alternatives to those thoughts. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore that. So this leads us directly into our thought records. Okay. And here we will learn how to manage those types of thoughts we just discussed. Thought records are tools that can help us to recognize and change our unhelpful thoughts. And more specifically, it helps us to actively pay more attention to our thoughts and work to change them. So ultimately, we are seeking to practice more balanced and fair ways of thinking, if that makes sense. So with practice, the notion is that thinking differently can become a second becomes second nature. Just as if you go to the gym or if you build up stamina to do something physically, it's the same thing with your mind. If you actively work through your thinking, then 9 times out of 10, it can become second nature, right? So we all have quick thoughts that pop into our head that are based on assumptions and not facts. So those automatic thoughts may seem believable, but they can be inaccurate. Okay. So thought records are useful because they point out the discrepancies in our thinking. Okay. So let's practice some of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a situation. Okay. And think about how that situation makes us feel. And then we're going to rate those feelings initially. Okay. And then we'll jot down what those automatic thoughts about that situation are. We'll determine the evidence that supports those thoughts and evidence that doesn't support those thoughts. This will help us to basically generate a more balanced alternative thought that we can write down as a reminder for similar situations in the future. Okay. So we will now work through a thought record example with someone. So is there anyone who has had a challenging situation within the last week that made them feel a strong mood? Kate said
Yeah, yeah, if that's okay. I did have a situation that made me have some strong moods. So this past week I was at work and two of my coworkers were talking about going on a double date. But there were only three of us there, so just myself and the two of them were in that office, and they continued to talk about it kind of a lot. And it seemed like they were very obviously trying to talk about it where I could hear them, kind of like make sure I knew I wasn't invited kind of thing. So it was really frustrating. It just kind of, I felt like it reinforced some of the negative thoughts that I already have about myself and about my interactions with my coworkers. So it was just,
Okay.
it
So
was a
the
really annoying
situation is you're at work, your friends are next to you, or people that you usually would probably talk to, if I'm not mistaken, and they were having a conversation without you.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel? What was your mood? How did you feel about that?
I had a few different kind of emotions run through my head. I definitely felt kind of lonely. I guess that'd be a way to put it. I also felt a little bit angry, and I felt left out.
You know, those types of emotions are really understandable. I think that being surrounded by people who you know and they're not including you in the conversation, it can feel really alienating. So if you were to talk about your loneliness and sadness and isolation or anger that you mentioned with the situation, how would you rate those?
I would say loneliness, I was at probably like an 80%.
Okay.
Feeling left out was pretty high, like a 90%. And angry was like a 50%.
Sure. Okay. And did you feel that there was any evidence to support those thoughts or feelings that you had?
Um, I mean, yeah, kind of. So definitely just thinking about the fact that I don't really have a lot of friends, but I kind of thought these guys were my friends. So, I mean, that's not the way that I'm friendly with people. So, kind of that thought was just like, they're not my real friends.
Right.
And also kind of thinking like nobody likes me kind of kept coming in my head.
Yeah.
And I mean, if those are the girls that I thought were my friends and they don't even invite me to stuff, probably no one likes me.
You know, Kate, I really feel like this is a situation that you've probably not experienced, or like other people have probably experienced the same thing. Um, does anybody else feel like they've experienced feeling alienated around people who they felt like were their friends and weren't including them in something? Has anybody else ever experienced that before?
I definitely have.
Mm-hmm. right? And I think that that itself speaks to us actually trying to find alternatives. So that leads us into evidence that doesn't support that hot thought. So was there any evidence that you came up with that made you feel like that maybe this wasn't supporting it?
Um, so usually I wouldn't have, but since you kind of told us about this last week, I tried to.
Mhm.
And I guess I kind of could think about the fact that I've been invited to things in the past, and sometimes I've not even gone. I've been invited and said no or not shown up, but I've
Yeah.
been invited to things before.
Hmm.
Also, I've had some good interactions with them.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a reason I thought they were my friend before. So wondering if maybe it's just they didn't invite me because I don't have a boyfriend and that would be
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Um,
Really.
yeah, that kind of thought. And then also, I mean, they've given me like compliments that would make me think they might like me. I mean, they've said I'm funny and that kind of thing before. So
Mhm.
just those kinds of things
So
made
it
me kind
sounds
of
like
start
you
down
have a lot of qualities that contradict what your thought was initially, right? Um, Coworkers not inviting you to something doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a funny person or a good person, right? So seems like the evidence is really balanced, and a lot of times, like for example, we all know this is a really good teaching moment that a lot of times if we never explore the evidence that doesn't support those thoughts. We always automatically go to the thing that makes us feel down and say, oh, this is depressing, and I'm gonna look at this in a negative way. We never look at the positive, and this is, like I said, a teachable moment. So I appreciate Kate for saying that, right? Because there is good evidence to support that. She was invited to things before. She is a funny person, and she notices those things by herself. So, Kate, were there any, I would say, alternative or balanced thoughts that you came up with that you feel like can be used later on? I think we froze. Um, so, Ashley, sorry, Kate, are there any thoughts after we discussed the evidence that doesn't support it and does support it that you came up with that you can use for later?
Yeah, thinking about that thought of like people do like me, people do say kind things to me. That's something I can kind of replay in my head, I think, because I'm definitely somebody who, like you said, I usually think of the evidence that supports the thing that's making me mad. Like I
Right.
want to get more down, I want to get more mad, but kind of thinking of the opposite and thinking no, people do like me. I think that could actually help me. I kind of feel like it's helped even just in this conversation. I feel a little bit better.
That's awesome. So basically, when you have those thoughts again, or if you're in a similar situation where you feel the same moods, this is something that you can just look at on a post-it note or something that you put in your notes on your phone that you can easily access and say, okay, let me read this and realize that I don't have to jump to conclusions and think about those negative thoughts, but instead there are positive alternatives. That's awesome. So after all of that, how would you rate your mood now?
So those moods that we talked about before, feeling left out, feeling angry, and feeling lonely, I would say lonely has gone down probably like a 45 now.
That's good.
Um, yeah, left out lower as well, probably like a 40. Just especially looking at the facts of the situation kind of brought that down.
Mhm.
And angry has kind of gone along with that. It's a 15%
That
now.
is awesome. Those are really big differences that I personally feel like you're the expert in your own life with. Like, this is something that because you're more cognizant of your thoughts, you're able to have different alternative ways of thinking. And that is just something that you have. Like, that's your resiliency that you can use later on for other situations. That is awesome. So it looks like we have, thank you for that, Kate, for sharing. We appreciate that. So it looks like we have time for one more. we'll go over another one. If anybody else feels like they're up for the challenge and wants to do another thought record or has a situation.
I can do mine from this
Awesome.
week. So the situation that I encountered this week, I had a really good friend of mine that canceled dinner on me, and I don't know. Usually stuff like that doesn't really bother me too bad, but for some reason when she canceled on me, it was kind of like, that's just one more thing bad that's happened this week. And it kind of made me feel really anxious and worried that she was upset with me, or that she was mad at me about something. And I was feeling really sad.
So it sounds like
Because
I'm hearing you say that, okay, you're in a situation where somebody that you know really well decides that they are canceling dinner plans. That would make anybody feel worried or sad or anxious, right? So how would you rate those emotions that you just described?
I would say feeling anxious and worried that she was upset with me about something because she usually doesn't cancel on me. I would say that was about a 60%. And then I was feeling probably about 40% with the sad, because I just really enjoyed being with her, and I'd had a rough week and I was looking forward to it. And she's kind of my go-to person when I'm having a rough time, to be able to talk things through. And it just made me sad that we weren't going to get together after all.
Like you have a lot of personal things that are making you feel that way about this situation. Like you said that, we're looking forward to it. So if that anticipation mixed with the canceling of plans can make you feel like, oh no, something's going wrong here. And just like we talked about with Kate's situation, our thoughts automatically go to the negative, right? So what evidence, what automatic thoughts I should say, did you have within this situation?
Well, my first thought was that she's mad at me.
Oh yeah.
Because on top of her not like canceling, and she usually doesn't cancel, she hasn't been texting me as much this week. Like, I mean, she went like 2 days before responding to one of my text messages, and that's just not like her.
Right. I know we all have friends that, we just talk to all the time. We're just buddies with, and we talk about things that probably aren't important to the rest of the world, but to us it's really important. And when they don't respond to you, something's wrong, right? Like it's just out of the ordinary for that. I think we can all agree to that. So what evidence supported that automatic thought for you?
The evidence that supported it, that the evidence for me was that she usually doesn't cancel. And she hadn't been texting me as much this week. Right.
So there's already some things going on, like you're like, okay, this is kind of a buildup. It's not just some rational thing that just happened. And, it was like, now you have evidence to support it. And that's what our mind does. We have a negative thought, and then we're like, oh, this must be happening because, right? So what evidence do you have that's not supporting that?
So she did tell me that she wasn't feeling well. And so, I mean, that would tell me right there, okay, she's not feeling well. That could be why she wasn't texting me, because she didn't, I know when I don't feel well, I don't feel like, calling people and texting people. And she had plans to do something else this weekend, and she canceled that too. So, if she had gone ahead with those plans and canceled on me, I think that would have been confirmation that, something's going on, but she had to cancel that too. So that just made me realize, okay, it's not me. I need to settle down
and I'm happy that you were able to kind of actively think about this situation and come at it from a different angle.
Well, it was the homework.
Yeah,
it was the homework.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad that you had that opportunity to think about other alternatives. So that's what I want to know now. In this situation, what alternative balanced thought would you have in a situation like this?
I would say my balanced thought was, all right, she's probably not upset with me. It's more likely that she isn't feeling well and she legitimately can't make dinner.
Okay. So in situations like this, now we know how to actively think about it. Instead of
Right.
going off that first thought, we can find evidence that supports it and evidence that doesn't support it. And 9 times out of 10, when we look at ways that it doesn't support it, we're able to find better thoughts. And that's
Yes.
the point of this homework, is to write those balanced thoughts down so that if similar situations come up like this, we're able to have the ammo that we need, right? Especially
Right. Right.
and our behaviors will be different because of that. So how would you rate your anxiety, worriness, and sadness now?
I would say my anxiousness and being worried, that's closer down to like a 10%.
Huge.
Still a little sad because we didn't get together, but not sad because I think she's mad at me. So
Right.
little different kind of sad, probably about 20%. And then I had to add a mood. I'm disappointed, but it's not a bad thing because disappointment happens and
Right.
I'm able to cope with that disappointment. So I'd say about a 70% on the disappointment.
Mhm. See, what this does is it helps you to conserve your energy and use it in places that are
Mhm.
more important, right? You're not, spending so much energy on feeling anxious and worried about a situation that you really should just be, doing something else, or, having a better explanation for why this is going on. And I think that we
Right.
all can test that as well. So I appreciate you for sharing. I'm sure we all do. So now we'll kind of start to wrap things up. Now that we've done thought records, so the best time to complete a thought record is usually shortly after you notice a change in how you're feeling. Okay, so writing down that situation and how you feel will better ensure that you can remember certain details about it. So I want to let you all know that we're going through this together, and this group is only one part of your healing journey. Okay, so today we had the opportunity to learn about cognitive behavioral triangle, which is how our thoughts affect our emotions, which impacts our thoughts and behaviors. No, I'm sorry. We learned about, triangles and how our thoughts affect our emotion, impact our behaviors, and we also discussed thought records. So the goal of today was to become more cognizant of our thoughts, and I think that we all had an opportunity to do that. Those of you who didn't have a chance to go over your thought records, we'll go over those next time. So ultimately, we can all agree that decreasing our depression is a goal of ours. So I appreciate everybody for sharing. So for homework, I would like everybody to complete at least one thought record for a situation that made them feel a strong mood. And remember that the purpose of the thought record is to master the skill of replacing our negative and unrealistic automatic thoughts about a situation with more helpful ones. So we'll discuss these situations next time we meet. Does anybody have any questions about today's session and our homework before we close?
Do we just have to do one thought record or could we do more?
Yes, so at least one thought record. If you write down multiple, I just want to see that everybody's at least doing the homework. I don't want it to be anything unrealistic, but at least if you do one, then you'll be good for next session so that we can go over them.
Okay.
Any other questions? Everybody good? Awesome. I will see you guys next week. Thank you for coming.